Hello, my friends. Chad Neighbors here, the Chad Neighbors, back with another BattleTech video. The subject is one near and dear to my heart. Quad mechs. Quads, quadrupeds, whatever you want to call them, are a pretty polarizing subject in the game. Some players love them, some despise them, and others are aggressively ambivalent, seeing them as an appendix, a vestigial organ of sorts in the greater taxonomy of mechs. My take: I love them, but more importantly, I've gotten such consistently good mileage out of them that they are almost banned at our tables. So whether you're a quad hater, a quad fan, or just don't know what to think about them, this video is going to bring you up to speed on these multi-legged menaces. Here's the bottom line up front. Quads are not great for point-blank kickfests, but they are uniformly superior for firefights and avoiding the show-stopping mishaps that always seem to happen in a game of BattleTech. So let's begin with the slander, or charitably, complaints that some BattleTech players level against quads, because I'm going to be summarily dismantling all of them here in a minute. Note also, I'm talking about Classic BattleTech from here on out. You Alpha Strike players, this stuff may or may not apply to quads in your games. Let's start off with a big gripe, and it's this. Quads are slot starved. They lose out on internal space because they don't have arms, having instead 2 more legs. Since under the construction rules for BattleTech, legs have half as many total possible internal slots as arms, they give up a lot of space for equipment. And again, this is one of the biggest grievances some players have against them. This gripe is patently true on its face, but I think it lacks teeth. Quads of any weight class are entirely capable of sporting effective loadouts despite this lack of internal space compared to bipeds. And I've got the record sheets to prove it. We'll get to that in a minute. The other major complaint against them, and for so many players a deal breaker, is that quads cannot torso twist and furthermore have no arm firing arcs. This means a comparatively narrow effective firing arc during the shooting phase. This, frankly, is a major concern because poor positioning or losing initiative results in speedy attackers exploiting a quad's inability to bring its firepower to bear. They can shoot at them and not face any return fire from their target. Ultimately, this makes quads disadvantaged in close combat compared to bipeds, and it means they cannot easily retaliate against attackers in their side or rear arcs. So quads, lacking arms, also cannot punch or equip most melee weapons either. That's totally fair, but as we will learn in just a moment, quads have specialized advantages that make this gripe one that's more of preference and not a true black mark against them. Lastly, some players think that quads simply don't look cool, but these people are wrong. Lacking in good taste and should be shunned. Even I'll admit they're partially wrong. There are some animal totem quads out there that are indeed hideous, but let's table that for now. So, with the list of complaints out of the way, it's time to talk about the many wonderful advantages that quads convey to the savvy commander. Note also that unless otherwise specifically mentioned or covered in certain special case rules, all of the following perks will only apply if a quad still has all of its legs attached. First up, they are somewhat more nimble, ton for ton, than bipeds, and this is because they can execute a sidestep or lateral step maneuver. Basically, they can move into the front left or front right hex without changing their facing for just 2 movement points. The same maneuver done by a biped takes 3 movement points, 1 for the turn, 1 to move into the hex, and then 1 more MP to turn back to their original facing. This is a small perk in the favor of quads, but it's a handy one, and it does make a difference when moving around on the board. The next perk is one of my absolute favorites, and it is that quads can shoot from prone with no gunnery penalty. This is terrific because it allows any quad to hit the deck and grab a little more cover if it's out in the open, or really maximize woods without compromising effective shooting. A quad that is prone in heavy woods, for instance, will get a net +3 to its target number against any enemy attacks that aren't originating from an adjacent hex. And all the while, they will return fire without that usual +2 penalty to its own shots. The single biggest advantage that quads have, or rather the one you'll get to enjoy the most, is that they are inherently stable, and this is represented by a +2 bonus to all piloting skill rolls. As all seasoned players already know, PSRs are a common occurrence in BattleTech. That's resisting kicks, keeping your balance after whiffing your own kick, crossing over rubble, crossing water, withstanding lots of incoming damage, or just sticking the landing after a death from above attack. This bonus also counts for the subsequent seatbelt check for pilot damage should you fall. I could go on and on. The bottom line is this: bad things happen in BattleTech and tend to get worse when mechs fall down for any reason. Since quads are far less likely to topple in the first place, and with a skill 4 veteran pilot, they will automatically pass most PSRs. This adds up to a significant increase in survivability. And here's yet another element to the hunker and cover meta. Quads don't even have to make a PSR in the first place to stand back up. And that means you can dive for prone without fear, or should you get knocked down for any reason, pop right back up without any worry of pitching over again, because that's always embarrassing. Consider this PSR bonus in a way can also be a BV saving measure. You can afford to skimp a little bit on improving pilot skill for a quad pilot in standard games, and that can let you devote the BV on your list to something else. But here's where we get to the really good stuff. Far and away, the single biggest advantage that quads have, and one they don't lose even should they lose a leg, is that they make much better use of partial cover. How much better? How about more than half of their hit chart is blocked? The rules for partial cover state that for any mech with valid partial cover, incoming shots that roll a leg result hit the cover instead and do no damage. Since quads have a leg result in both left and right arm locations on the chart, your foes are going to plow lots of fire uselessly into cover and not into the armor of your studly quad mech. And what's more, quads also get an improved hold down bonus and have an easier time going hold down if that optional rule is in use at your table. It is apparent that these defensive attributes make for highly survivable machines if you can make good use of terrain during a mission. And speaking of survivability, a quad mech is still reasonably mobile if it loses one of its legs. Losing a leg is a showstopper for any biped, but quads will only slow down significantly and lose all those nice perks we've just talked about. I should point out that they will still fall when the leg comes off. They'll fall automatically, and subsequently they'll have to start making PSRs to stand back up. And last but not least, a fun party trick and hateful surprise for light mechs going in for the backstab is that quads can kick into their rear arc. Call it the horse kick, the mule kick, whatever. If you've got all 4 legs and an enemy is right behind you, you can crack their shins at a -1 penalty for a net +1 to a kick attack as usual. That is a nice set of traits to be sure. But what does this add up to? What does this mean to you, the prospective quad purchaser? For starters, a quad with long-ranged weapons makes an ideal anchor for most lances, meaning stand off, grab some cover, and pound targets to scrap with little to fear from return fire, and all while enjoying easier shooting since you're stationary. The unique cover advantages we talked about really are huge benefits and cannot be overstated. A smartly located quad on the board is a nightmare to dislodge without substantial air assets or artillery. Also, all quads of any weight class are uniformly great for treacherous terrain. Anytime you'll be risking a lot of PSRs while moving around, you want a quad. This can open up new approaches and new strategies on the board. This stability bonus, as mentioned, makes them a boon for low-skilled pilots in all circumstances, in any terrain. If you've got a decent shooter that sadly acts like a dog on a slick tile floor while out on maneuvers, you can stick them in a quad to get the most out of them while mitigating that shortcoming, at least until they get their forklift certification. And lastly, quads are more than efficient enough when it comes to internal space. The reduction in overall slots is constantly brought up, but I'm telling you, it is mostly an academic concern, not a practical one. In BattleTech, the design considerations of armament, armor, speed, and cooling are rarely constrained against a lack of internal space unless you are truly packing out a mech with some space hogging advanced tech or some building some weird boating mech. Case in point, let's look at one of the most famously efficient and beloved assault mechs, the 80-ton awesome AWS-8Q. And let's see if its loadout is achievable on my very favorite quad chassis, the Goliath GOL-1H, also 80 tons. Starting from scratch and looking to replicate all of its pertinent stats, if we swap to a smaller engine in the Goliath, you'll see that you can indeed equip 3 PPCs and the same number of heat sinks that the Awesome has, with room to spare. Let's go through it line by line. The Awesome moves 3.5, has 240 out of a possible 247 points of armor, 28 single heat sinks, 3 PPCs, and a small laser. 19 of 78 internal slots remaining. The modified Goliath chassis now moves 3.5 with the engine swap, has 240 of a possible 263 points of armor, 28 single heat sinks, 3 PPCs, and a small laser. 6 of 66 slots remaining. I want you to keep in mind also that even this mighty triple PPC loadout on an assault mech is still just a baseline benchmark. All manner of highly effective space and weight efficient quad builds are possible in most eras with the judicious use of the right weapons and technologies. I could make comparisons like this all day long, but I trust this proves the crux of my earlier assertion. Fewer slots overall is hardly a handicap or a deal breaker for a quad chassis, practically speaking. Now, if you are putting a quad or 5 out on the board, you do need to be aware of some genuine drawbacks that I've encountered in my long experience using them. And the first is racking up multiple motive hits, multiple actuator hits. 4 legs means 4 sets of hip, upper leg, lower leg, and foot actuators. And movement point reduction from critical damage, as ever, stacks. So there's more opportunities for those actuators to get hit. A gnarly leg hit or 2 can nearly immobilize a quad, putting you down to minimum movement in short order. But note here too that you don't lose your quad perks just from actuator hits. That doesn't take effect until you actually lose the leg. I should further point out, in some cases, it's possible for a quad to gain MP back and remain mobile if a badly maimed leg with lots of actuator damage gets blown off. Back to the limited firing arc issue. Those can be mitigated partially in the form of directional torso mounts and the installation of a quad battle mech turret. But neither of these are perfect fixes. The former is a chassis quirk, and like all such quirks, is an optional rule. You may not get to use that at your table with your group. And the latter is a piece of equipment, freely installable in certain eras, but it comes at the cost of tonnage and internal slots. And weapons must be equipped to it, so you're only going to end up with some guns benefiting from an improved field of fire. Worse, both of these solutions can jam in their set arc if they take damage. So you should think twice before you commit to them, as it just would not do to have your main weapons frozen facing the wrong way for the remainder of the game. When you're outfitting a quad of any tonnage, keep in mind that some especially bulky technologies like ferrofibrous armor, sometimes even XL engines, won't be as feasible as they would be on a biped that has a lot more slots to spend. Quads also can indeed prove more vulnerable in close fights if you lose initiative. Because of this, good SOP is to always keep a wingman nearby that can help to cover those dead zones or discourage that close-in rush in the first place. As long as you keep them at a distance, you'll find that a quad has a broad enough field of fire to cover most of the board. And that will do it, folks. With this brainwashing session complete, let me be the first to welcome you to the coalition of enlightened quad mech enjoyers. I do want to know what you think about them in the comments, even if you have incorrect opinions on them. I only ask that you hit like and subscribe before you mash caps lock. Be sure to sign up for my upcoming email newsletter with the link down in the description, because I've got lots of great stuff planned for the future, and it'll be an easy way to keep in touch for the next round of the PRI and a whole lot more. As ever, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And remember, have character, don't be a character. Good night.